Yo. So why are most SME developers broke or strapped for cash? In this video, I'm going to explain why and how you can avoid falling into the same situation. Stick around to the end to find out. So what are we really talking about here? Because there are a lot of developers out there clearly making a lot of money with strong underlying businesses. Well, usually those kind of developers are either really well established, really well capitalized, or have other businesses attached to their main development group. What we're looking at in this video is your average SME developer, usually with 2 to 3 sites on at any given time and working full-time in property development. It's these type of developers who fall into frequent cash flow problems, and usually it comes down to 3 core issues. The first one is overstretched, simply just buying more stock than their available war chest will allow them to. And the second one is just mistakes. Mistakes made at any point in the project life cycle can lead to serious cost implications. And the third one is just market dynamics, force majeure circumstances, whether that's pandemic, inflation, wars, or interest rates going up. So can you really mitigate these 3 main issues entirely? Let's look at them one by one. So overstretched. You'd think this is pretty easy to solve. Just stop buying as many sites and you won't have the problem. Well, you'd be right in assuming that, but it's not that simple in a development business. Developers in general, and I'm included in this scenario, need to do a better job of monitoring capital flows. And it's a bit of a moving beast, but if you're moving from job to job, you need to make sure that your financial commitments are adequately funded. However, it's the nature of a property development business. It's slow and complex and reliant on loads of third parties, which means that rarely does anything go to the exact plan. And for the business to sustain its growth, it needs a solid pipeline of sites projecting into the future. And sites aren't, just off the shelf. You can't just go to the site market and pick up new projects. Sometimes the right sites only come along a couple times a year, and whilst it may not be the optimal time for a developer to allocate resources to that site, it may be too good of an opportunity to pass up on. This is usually where developer optimism comes in, and almost every developer is guilty of it. We convince ourselves that we can fund this site, we will find a way, sometimes securing the site before we've even found the funding. And usually you can make it work. If you've got a good experience with finding funding and finding investor partners, then this may not be too much of an issue. But every now and then, it doesn't quite go to plan. And that's where that optimism can just overstretch your available capital. But in those scenarios where we may struggle to find the funding or force ourselves into a position where we have to find it, we may be reliant on other projects, which are then reliant on third parties like councils, lenders, solicitors, architects, brokers, valuers, and so much more. And all of those potential bottlenecks can delay capital flows, meaning we have this commitment over here, but the capital source can't be released and we can't necessarily do anything about it. And then you get into this stretched position. So it's a combination of good opportunities with awkward timing, reliance on third parties, and developer optimism that can all lead to developers overstretching themselves on their capital requirements. But sadly, that is just the nature of property development. You're always going to be stuck in that place until you're big enough where you can then allocate a portion of capital towards growing the pipeline. So what about mistakes? Now, mistakes can happen anywhere. They might not even be your fault, but as the developer, generally speaking, you're going to pay the price for that mistake, whether that's a fiscal cost or a time cost, which inherently leads to another fiscal cost. And that's what it means to be a developer. You are just taking on a load of risks, sometimes just for other people, but it's because you own the asset. You are the controller at the top of the chain. So the costs of any mistakes usually come back to bite you. So what can you do to mitigate these risks? You have to build systems and processes around them. You have to learn, fail fast, and learn quickly. And those systems and processes should help mitigate mistakes in the future by learning from mistakes you're making today. You can also increase control measures across every part of the project life cycle, but this takes experience and time to put in the right people in the right positions. But also, less optimistic forecasting can help as well. Because if you're anticipating downsides where they may or may not happen, at least you're covering your back so that if you get into a sticky position, you've at least got a way out. Because there's just no way you can eradicate all the mistakes possible in a development because you're reliant on so many third parties and market movements which you don't have any control of. So you have to accept that mistakes are always going to happen. But what can you continuously do to try and mitigate them? Education is probably the cheapest way to avoid mistakes because you can implement from other people's experiences, you can implement their practices and their processes and procedures to try and avoid ever making the mistake yourself. And in property development, with the amount of pitfalls and the amount of things you have to learn, the amount of strategies out there, you have to educate yourself, whether that's through proactive education, by just reading books and going to speak to the right people, or going to take courses and learning from a mentor. You have to be absorbing knowledge all the time. There is no developer in the world who knows everything. You just have to keep going, keep learning, keep trialing and erroring, and then your experience over time solidifies those learnings. Now, I'm not going to mention education in this video without then plugging our course. So if you check out the link in the description, we've created a HMO masterclass, which is basically the first baby steps in learning how to become a developer. And HMOs are a great entry point for people who don't have the necessary property experience. So check out the link in the description, drop me your contact details, and I'll send you an email with the follow-up information. And then there's market dynamics, the third big issue that curses developers. Sadly, there is nothing you can do about the market dynamics, but you can better prepare yourself. So start studying macro trends. Look what's happening with the Bank of England, keep an eye on global politics and global economics, and listen to good podcasts and try to stay away from the news too much because there's a lot of fear mongering. But if you go straight to the specialists on podcasts or read their articles and different white papers that are published online, you can start to get a better worldview of what's happening, because something that happens over here in some country could drastically affect borrowing costs in our country. And it's important that you're aware of macro trends if you're looking to borrow heavy amounts of capital and move into the world of development on a larger scale. So what is the best way to solve the cash flow problem? The answer is actually quite simple, and you just need more cash flow. But the only way to get more cash flow is to be able to build your business and get more time back. And the main problem for most SME developers is that they spend so much time in their business where they're busy enough that it takes up a full-time role, but it leaves them with no spare time to actually extract themselves and build the business, hire in staff, so that they can build other revenue streams. So most SME developers get trapped in the same life cycle where they just can't get out and they can't find other ways to make more cash flow. So they're reliant on capital pots, debt instruments, or outside investors. In essence, most full-time SME developers are actually just self-employed. They operate like a business, but they're not actually a business because they're the jack of all trades, doing all the different jobs and roles required to run the projects, but they're not actually scaling out transactions and business operations to grow the bottom line of the development business. So to build up the developments, it requires either a large pot of capital or a cash flow producing trading business on the side that can feed in reliable cash flow to stimulate the developments and help grow the business. I personally believe the best way to do this is by building a trading vehicle that directly complements your developments. Because not only does it make life easier moving management staff around in the early days where you have staff that may perform multiple functions and they're sympathetic as the business is operating in the same space, but also as you grow, you're saving margins in-house. So you're building trading vehicles on the side that spin off cash flow, but also save the other vehicle money. So you're saving those external margins. And that's those businesses folding into each other, which is a great way to build a stronger development group. That doesn't mean that if you already have an existing trading business that's spinning off loads of cash, like an e-commerce store, or you're doing recruitment or online trading or whatever it is, you're making cash and you're helping that feed into your developments to grow your portfolio. That's perfectly fine as well. It's just that a time management preference. Can you really feasibly build a development business and keep this other business going? Whereas when they fold into each other, you can build tiers of management that all operate within the same ecosystem. Whichever way you do it, it's this additional cash flow that acts as a cushion to your developments, and it can either fund the developments themselves or offer a nice cash cushion in the event of mistakes or seizing a good buying opportunity. I really don't see how developers can grow sustainably without a good trading business underneath acting as a buffer on the cash flow, assuming you don't have a huge cash pot to start with or a high-paying part-time salary on the side. So in summary, you may be thinking, fuck, I need to build a trading business as well as doing developments to make it work successfully. That's not quite what I'm saying. Most people can handle one or two smaller projects on the side if they're delegating out everything to reliable development services businesses like ours. And I actually think that's the best way to do it. If you're making good money somewhere else, delegate everything out. Why distract yourself from the thing that's making you money? Like, make the money, pass it on to someone else. Yes, you're going to pay away margins, but you're making more money. So the margins you'd save by doing it yourself, is that more than the money you're making over here? It's probably not if this is an established business, especially all the mistakes you'll make in the early days, and you will make mistakes when you step into developments. So it's better to do a nice transition where you pay someone else to do the works and build the portfolio. When there's that underlying rental income coming to support you working full-time for it, then you can either delegate and sub-manage that business that's making you money still and keep that feeding into the new business whilst you're then working more full-time, learning, doing the thing you enjoy, whatever your reasons are. I just always think it's better if you can keep an income coming in and let someone else do the work, and you're the passive learner on the side. And then eventually you step more and more into that role. This video is really dedicated towards those SME developers with ambitious growth plans to scale their development business, who are always running into cash flow problems, wondering what are they doing wrong. It's not necessarily what they're doing wrong, it's more what they're not doing. Like, what are they not doing on the side to complement the development business? It's so capital intensive and mistakes are so costly that you must have a buffer somewhere. Otherwise, you resort to the same thing most developers do, and that's just raising more finance, which just isn't a feasible way to build any business. Developments by nature can absorb large pots of capital, so sometimes it's fine, but is that really the kind of development business you want to build? The best ones are where the developments are isolated and they're on their own, and any mistakes are subsidized by your own trading vehicle, your own money that you're making somewhere else, and that makes you a stronger development business. You're not reliant on stacking up more debt to progress projects to the next stage and the next stage. So if you're in this position, or you can see yourself on the horizon potentially getting into this position, well, consider now attaching an element, a service element to your business that can produce more underlying cash flow to help stimulate your development without taking away from the margins within the developments themselves. If you can grow that revenue stream along with your developments and they work together in tandem, then you'll be onto a winning formula. And that's it for this video. Now drop me a comment, let me know your thoughts. Are there other ways you can improve a development business and increase the cash flow? Let me know. Like the video, and if you're an investor and you want to build a HMO portfolio or commercial to residential projects and you need development services, then we offer that from start to finish. We find the asset, we manage the asset through the construction period with our own construction team, and then we manage it with our lettings business on the back end. If you're interested, hit us up at info@bowpartners.co.uk or check out our website, www.bowpartners.com. Make sure you click the subscribe button, and thanks for watching.